Chapter 56. There was a man named Skafti. He was the son of Thorot. That father and son were great chiefs and very well skilled in law. Thorot was thought to be rather crafty and guileful. They stood by Gissur the White in every quarrel. As for the men from Fljótslíð and the dwellers in Rangárvellir, they came in a great body to the thing. Gunnar was so beloved that all said with one voice that they would back him. Then they all came to the thing and fitted up their booths. In company with Gissur the White were these chiefs: Skafti Thorodsson, Ásgrim son of Elliðagrim, Odd of Kiðjaberg, and Halldór Örnólfsson. One day men went to the Hill of Laws, and then Geir the priest stood up and gave notice that he had a suit of manslaughter against Gunnar for the slaying of Otkell. Another suit of manslaughter he brought against Gunnar for the slaying of Hallbjörn the White. Then, too, he went on in the same way as to the slaying of Auðolf, and so, too, as to the slaying of Skamkell. Then, too, he laid a suit of manslaughter against Kolskegg for the slaying of Hallkell. And when he had given due notice of all his suits of manslaughter, it was said that he spoke well. He asked, too, in what house in the district the defendants dwelt. After that men went away from the Hill of Laws, and so the thing went on till the day when the courts were to be set to try suits. Then either side gathered their men together in great strength. Geir the priest and Gissur the White stood at the court of the men of Rangárvellir looking north, and Gunnar and Njal stood looking south towards the court. Geir the priest bade Gunnar listen to his oath, and then he took the oath and afterwards declared his suit. Then he let men bear witness of the notice given of the suit. Then he called upon the neighbours who were to form the inquest to take their seats. Then he called on Gunnar to challenge the inquest, and then he called on the inquest to make known their finding. Then the neighbours who were summoned to the inquest went to the court and took witness, and said that there was a bar to their finding in the suit as to Auðolf's slaying, because the next of kin who ought to follow it up was in Norway, and so they had nothing to do with that suit. After that they announced their finding in the suit as to Otkell, and brought in Gunnar as truly guilty of killing him. Then Geir the priest called on Gunnar for his defence, and took witness of all the steps in the suit which had been proved. Then Gunnar, in his turn, called on Geir the priest to listen to his oath, and to the defence which he was about to bring forward in the suit. Then he took the oath and said, "This defence I make to this suit, that I took witness and outlawed Otkell before my neighbours for that bloody wound which I got from Otkell with his spur. But you, Geir the priest, I forbid by a lawful protest made before a priest to pursue this suit, and so too I forbid the judges to hear it. And with this I make all the steps hitherto taken in this suit null and void. I forbid you by a lawful protest, a full, fair, and binding protest, as I have a right to forbid you by the common custom of the thing and by the law of the land. Besides, I will tell you something else which I mean to do," said Gunnar. "What?" said Geir. "Will you challenge me to a duel as you are wont, and not observe the law?" "Not that," said Gunnar. "I shall summon you at the Hill of Laws for that you called those men to the inquest who had no right to deal with Auðolf's slaying, and I will declare you for that guilty of outlawry." Then Njal said, "Things must not take this turn, for the only end of it will be that this strife will be carried to extremes. Each of you, as it seems to me, has much on his side. There are some of these manslaughters, Gunnar, about which you can say nothing to hinder the court from finding you guilty. But you have set in motion a suit against Geir in which he, too, must be found guilty. You too, Geir the priest, shall know that this suit of outlawry which hangs over you shall not be abandoned if you do not listen to my words." Thorot the priest said, "It seems to us as though the most peaceful way would be that a settlement and atonement is come to in the suit. But why do you say so little, Gissur the White?" "It seems to me," said Gissur, "as though we shall need to have strong support for our suit. We may see, too, that Gunnar's friends stand near him, and so the best turn for us that things can take is that good men and true should decide an award on the suit, if Gunnar so wills it." "I have always been willing to make matters up," said Gunnar. "And besides, you have much wrong to follow up. But still I think I was hard driven to do as I did." And now the end of those suits was, by the counsel of the wisest men, that all the suits were put to arbitration. 6 men were to make this award, and it was decided there and then at the Thing. The award was that Skamkell should be unatoned. The blood money for Otkell's death was to be set off against the wound Gunnar got from the spur, and as for the rest of the manslaughters, they were paid for in line with the worth of the men, and Gunnar's kinsmen gave money so that all the fines might be paid at the Thing. Then Geir the priest and Gissur the White went up and gave Gunnar pledges that they would keep the peace in good faith. Gunnar rode home from the Thing and thanked men for their help, and gave gifts to many, and got the greatest honour from the suit. Then Gunnar sat at home in his honour. Chapter 57. There was a man named Starkad. He was a son of Börk Blacktoothbeard, the son of Thorkell Clubfoot, who took the land round about Threehirning as the first settler. His wife's name was Hallbera. The sons of Starkad and Hallbera were these: Thorgeir and Börk and Thorkell. Hildigun the healer was their sister. They were very proud men in temper, hard-hearted and unkind. They treated men wrongfully. There was a man named Egill. He was a son of Kor, who took land as a settler between Stortalæk and Reyðarvatn. The brother of Egill was Önund of Tröllaskóg, father of Halli the Strong, who was at the slaying of Holta Thorid with the sons of Ketill the Smooth-Tongued. Egill lived at Sandgil. His sons were these: Kor and Óttar and Hauk. Their mother's name was Steinvör. She was Starkad's sister. Egill's sons were tall and aggressive. They were most unfair men. They were always on the side of Starkad's sons. Their sister was Guðrún Nightsun, and she was the best bred of women. Egill had taken into his house 2 Norwegians. One's name was Thorir, and the other's Thorgrim. They were not long arrived in Iceland for the first time, and were wealthy and beloved by their friends. They were well skilled in arms, too, and dauntless in everything. Starkad had a good horse of chestnut hue, and it was thought that no horse was his match in fight. Once it happened that these brothers from Sandgil were away under Threehirning. They had much gossip about all the householders in the Fljótslíð, and they fell at last to asking whether there was anyone that would fight a horse against them. But there were some men there who spoke so as to flatter and honour them, that not only was there no one who would dare do that, but that there was no one that had such a horse. Then Hildigun answered, "I know that man who will dare to fight horses with you." "Name him," they said. "Gunnar has a brown horse," she said, "and he will dare to fight his horse against you, and against anyone else." "As for you women," they said, "you think no one can be Gunnar's match. But though Geir the priest or Gissur the White have come off with shame from before him, still it is not certain that we shall fare in the same way." "You will fare much worse," she said. And so there arose out of this the greatest strife between them. Then Starkad said, "My will is that you try your hands on Gunnar last of all, for you will find it hard work to go against his good luck. You will give us leave, though, to offer him a horse fight." "I will give you leave, if you play him no trick." They said they would be sure to do what their father said. Then they rode to Hlíðarendi. Gunnar was at home and went out, and Kolskegg and Hjört went with him, and they gave them a hearty welcome, and asked where they meant to go. "No farther than here," they said. "We're told that you have a good horse, and we wish to challenge you to a horse fight." "Few stories can be told about my horse," said Gunnar. "He is young and untried in every way. But still you will be good enough to have the fight, for Hildegun guessed that you would be easy in matching your horse." "How came you to talk about that?" said Gunnar. "There were some men," said they, "who were sure that no one would dare to fight his horse with ours." "I would dare to fight him," said Gunnar, "but I think that was spitefully said." "Shall we look upon the match as made, then?" they asked. "Well, your journey will seem to you worthwhile if you have your way in this. But still I will beg this of you, that we so fight our horses that we make sport for each other, but that no quarrel may arise from it, and that you put no shame upon me. But if you do to me as you do to others, then there will be no help for it but that I shall turn against you in such a way as it will seem hard to you to put up with. In a word, I shall do then just as you do first." Then they rode home. Starkad asked how their journey had gone off. They said that Gunnar had made their journey a good one. "He gave his word to fight his horse, and we settled when and where the horse fight should be. But it was plain in everything that he thought he fell short of us, and he begged and prayed to get out of it." "It will often be found," said Hildegun, "that Gunnar is slow to be drawn into quarrels, but hard to overcome if he cannot avoid them." Gunnar rode to see Njal and told him of the horse fight, and what words had passed between them. "But how do you think the horse fight will turn out?" "You will have the upper hand," said Njal, "but many a man's death will arise out of this fight." "Will my death perhaps come out of it?" asked Gunnar. "Not out of this," said Njal. "But still they will bear in mind both the old and the new feud, and you will have no choice but to fight back." Then Gunnar rode home. Chapter 58. Just then Gunnar heard of the death of his father-in-law, Höskuld. A few nights later, the wife of Thráin, Þorgerð at Grjóta, gave birth to a baby boy. Then she sent a man to her mother and bade her choose whether it should be called Glúm or Höskuld. She asked to call it Höskuld, so that name was given to the boy. Gunnar and Hallgerð had 2 sons. The one's name was Högni, and the other's Grani. Högni was a brave man of few words, distrustful and slow to believe, but truthful. Then men rode to the horse fight, and a very great crowd was gathered together there. Gunnar was there, and his brothers, and the sons of Sigfús, and Njal and all his sons. There too was Starkad and his sons, and Egill and his sons. And they said to Gunnar that now they would lead the horses together. Gunnar said, "That was good." Skarphéðinn said, "Will you that I drive your horse, kinsman Gunnar?" "I will not have that," said Gunnar. "It wouldn't be amiss, though," said Skarphéðinn. "We are hot-headed on both sides." "You would say or do little," said Gunnar, "before a quarrel springs up. But with me it will take longer, though it will be all the same in the end." After that the horses were led together. Gunnar readied himself to drive his horse, but Skarphéðinn led him out. Gunnar was in a red tunic, and had about his loins a broad belt and a great riding rod in his hand. Then the horses ran at one another and bit each other so that there was no need for anyone to touch them, and that was the greatest sport. Then Þorgeir and Kol made up their minds that they would push their horse forward just as the horses rushed together, and see if Gunnar would fall before him. Then the horses ran at one another again, and both Þorgeir and Kol ran alongside their horse's flank. Gunnar pushed his horse against them, and what happened in a trice was this, that Þorgeir and his brother fell down flat on their backs, and their horse on top of them. Then they sprung up and rushed at Gunnar. Gunnar swung himself free and seized Kol, cast him down on the field so that he lay senseless. Þorgeir Starkadarsson smote Gunnar's horse such a blow that one of his eyes started out. Gunnar smote Þorgeir with his riding rod, and down fell Þorgeir senseless. But Gunnar went to his horse and said to Kolskegg, "Cut off the horse's head. He shall not live a maimed and blemished beast." So Kolskegg cut the head off the horse. Then Thorgeir got on his feet and took his weapons and wanted to fly at Gunnar, but that was stopped, and there was a great throng and crush. Skarphéðinn said, "This crowd wearies me, and it is far more manly that men should fight it out with weapons." And so he sang a song. "At the Thing there is a throng, past all bounds the crowding comes. Hard 'twill be to patch up peace 'twixt the men. This wearies me. Worthier is it far for men weapons red with gore to stain. I for one would sooner tame hunger huge of cub of wolf." Gunnar was still, so that one man was enough to hold him, and spoke no ill words. Njal tried to bring about a settlement, or to get pledges of peace, but Thorgeir said he would neither give nor take peace. Far rather, he said, would he see Gunnar dead for the blow. Kolskegg said, "Gunnar has before now stood too fast than that he should have been felled by words alone, and so it will be again." Then the men rode away from the horsefield, everyone to his home. They made no attack on Gunnar, and a half-year then passed. At the Thing the summer after, Gunnar met Olav the Peacock, his cousin, and he asked him to come and see him, but yet bade him beware, "For," said he, "they will do us all the harm they can, and mind you fare always with many men at your back." He gave him much good counsel beside, and they agreed that there should be the greatest friendship between them. Chapter 59. Ásgrim, son of Elliðagrim, had a suit to follow up at the Thing against Ulf Uggason. It was a matter of inheritance. Ásgrim took it up in such a way as was seldom his wont, for there was a bar to his suit, and the bar was this, that he had summoned 5 neighbours to bear witness when he ought to have summoned 9. Then Gunnar spoke and said, "I will challenge you to single combat on the island, Ulf Uggason, if men are not to get their rights by law. And Njal and my friend Helgi would like that I should take some share in defending your cause, Ásgrim, if they were not here themselves." "But," said Ulf, "this quarrel is not one between you and me." "Still, it shall be as good as though it were," said Gunnar. And the end of the suit was that Ulf had to pay all the money. Then Ásgrim said to Gunnar, "I will ask you to come and see me this summer, and I will always be with you in lawsuits, and never against you." Gunnar rode home from the Thing, and a little while later he and Njal met. Njal advised Gunnar to look out for himself, and said he had been told that those away at Thríhyrning meant to fall on him, and bade him never go about with a small company, and always to have his weapons with him. Gunnar said so it should be, and told him that Ásgrim had asked him to pay him a visit, "And I mean to go now this autumn." "Let no men know before you go how long you will be away," said Njal. "But besides, I beg you to let my sons ride with you, and then no attack will be made on you." So they settled that among themselves. Now the summer wears away till it was 8 weeks to winter. And then Gunnar said to Kolskegg, "Make yourself ready to ride, for we shall ride to a feast at Tunga." "Shall we say anything about it to Njal's sons?" said Kolskegg. "No," said Gunnar. "They shall come to no quarrels because of me." Chapter 60. They rode 3 together, Gunnar and his brothers. Gunnar had his halberd and his sword, Ölvir's gift. Kolskegg had his short sword. Hjört, too, had proper weapons. Then they rode to Tunga, and Ásgrim gave them a hearty welcome, and they were there some while. At last they announced that they meant to go home. Ásgrim gave them good gifts, and offered to ride east with them, but Gunnar said there was no need of any such thing, and so he did not go. Sigurd Swinehead was the name of a man who dwelt by Þjórsá water. He came to the farm under Thríhyrning, for he had given his word to keep watch on Gunnar's doings, and so he went and told them of his journey home. And, said he, there could never be a finer chance than just now, when he has only 2 men with him. How many men shall we need to lie in wait for him? Said Starkad. Weak men shall be as nothing before him, he said, and it is not safe to have fewer than 30 men. Where shall we lie in wait? By Knavaholar, he said. There he will not see us before he comes on us. Go to Sandgil and tell Eyill that 15 of them must ready themselves thence, and the other 15 will go to Knavaholar. Thorgeir said to Hildegun, This hand shall show you Gunnar dead this very night. But I guess, said she, that you will hang your head after you 2 meet. So those 4, father and sons, went away from Thrihirning, and 11 men besides, and they fared to Knavaholar and lay in wait there. Sigurd Swinehead came to Sandgil and said, Here am I sent by Starkad and his sons to tell you, Eyill, that you, father and sons, must go to Knavaholar to lie in wait for Gunnar. How many shall we be in all? Asked Eyill. 15, including me, he said. Quorl said, Now I mean to try myself against Kolskek. Then I think you mean to have a good deal on your hands, said Sigurd. Eyill begged his Norwegians to go with them. They said they had no quarrel with Gunnar. And besides, said Thordir, you seem to need much help here, if a crowd of men is needed against 3 men. Then Eyill went away and was angry. Then the mistress of the house said to the Norwegian, In an evil hour has my daughter Gudrun humbled herself and broken the point of her maidenly pride, and laid by your side as your wife, when you do not dare follow your father-in-law. And you must be a coward, she said. I will go, he said, with your husband, and neither of us 2 shall come back. After that he went to Thorgrim his companion and said, Take now the keys of my chests, for I shall never unlock them again. I bid you take for your own whatever of our goods you will, but sail away from Iceland and do not think of revenge for me. But if you do not leave the land, it will be your death. So the Norwegian joined their band. Chapter 61. Now we go back and tell of Gunnar, who rode east over Thjorsau water, but when he had gone a little way from the river he grew very drowsy, and bade his men lie down and rest there. They did so. He fell fast asleep, and struggled much as he slumbered. Then Kolskeg said, Gunnar dreams now. But Hjört said, I would like to wake him. That shall not be, said Kolskeg, but he shall dream his dream out. Gunnar lay a very long while, and threw off his cloak, and he grew very warm. Kolskeg said, What have you dreamt, kinsman? That have I dreamt, said Gunnar, which if I had dreamt in Tunga, I would never have ridden here with so few men. Tell us your dream, said Kolskeg. Then Gunnar sang a song. Chief that chargest foes in fight, now I fear that I have ridden short of men from Tunga this harvest. Ravens fast I sure shall break. Lord that scatters ocean's fire, this at least I long to say, Kite with wolf shall fight for marrow, ill I dreamt with wandering thought. I dreamt that I was riding on by Knavaholar, and there I thought I saw many wolves, and they all made for me. But I turned away from them straight towards Rankarvellir. And then I thought they pressed hard on me on all sides, but I kept them at bay, and shot all those that were foremost, till they came so close to me that I could not use my bow against them. Then I took my sword, and I smote with it with one hand, but thrust at them with my halberd with the other. Shield myself then I did not, and I thought then I knew not what shielded me. Then I slew many wolves, and you did too, Kolskeg. But Hjört they pulled down, and tore open his breast, and one had his heart in his mouth. but I grew so angry that I cut that wolf in two just below the shoulder. And after that the wolves turned and fled. Now my counsel is, brother Hjört, that you ride back west to Tunka." "I will not do that," said Hjört. "Though I know my death is sure, I will stand by you still." Then they rode and came east by Knavaholar, and Kolskegg said, "See you, kinsman, many spears stand up by the hills, and men with weapons." "It does not take me by surprise," said Gunnar, "that my dream is coming true." "What is best to be done now?" said Kolskegg. "I guess you will not run away from them." "They shall not have that to jeer about," said Gunnar. "But we will ride on down to the headland by Rongarvellir. There is some vantage ground there." Then they rode on to the headland and readied themselves there, and as they rode on past them, Koll called out and said, "Where are you running to now, Gunnar?" But Kolskegg said, "Say the same thing when this day has come to an end." Chapter 62. After that, Starkad egged on his men, and then they turned down upon them into the headland. Sigurd Swinehead came first and had a red shield, but in his other hand he held a cutlass. Gunnar saw him and shot an arrow at him from his bow. He held the shield up aloft when he saw the arrow flying high, and the shaft passed through the shield and into his eye, and so came out at the nape of his neck. And that was the first man slain. A second arrow Gunnar shot at Ulfhéðin, one of Starkad's men, and that struck him about the middle, and he fell at the feet of a yeoman, and the yeoman fell over him. Kolskegg cast a stone, and struck the yeoman on the head, and that was his death blow. Then Starkad said, "It will never suit us that he should use his bow, but let us come on well and stoutly." Then each man egged on the other, and Gunnar guarded himself with his bow and arrows as long as he could. After that he threw them down, and then he took his halberd and sword and fought with both hands. There was for a long time the hardest of fights, but still Gunnar and Kolskegg slew man after man. Then Þorgeir Starkadason said, "I vowed to bring Hildegun your head, Gunnar." Then Gunnar sang a song. "You, that battle-sleet down bringeth, scarce I think you speakest truth. She, the girl with golden armlets, cannot care for such a gift. But, O serpent's hoard despoiler, if the maid must have my head, maid whose wrist Rhine's fire wreatheth, closer come to crash of spear." "She will not think that so much worth having," said Gunnar, "but still to get it you will have to come nearer." Þorgeir said to his brothers, "Let us run all of us upon him at once. He has no shield, and we shall have his life in our hands." So Börk and Þorkell both ran forward and were quicker than Þorgeir. Börk aimed a blow at Gunnar, and Gunnar threw his halberd so hard in the way that the sword flew out of Börk's hand. Then he saw Þorkell standing on his other hand within the stroke of a sword. Gunnar was standing with his body swayed a little on one side, and he made a sweep with his sword and caught Þorkell on the neck, and off flew his head. Koll Egilson said, "Let me get at Kolskegg," and turning to Kolskegg he said, "This I have often said, that we two would be just about an even match in fight." "That we can soon prove," said Kolskegg. Koll thrust at him with his spear. Kolskegg had just slain a man, and had his hands full, and so he could not throw his shield before the blow, and the thrust came upon his thigh, on the outside of the limb, and went through it. Kolskegg turned sharp round and strode towards him, and smote him with his short sword on the thigh, and cut off his leg, and said, "Did it touch you or not?" "Now," said Koll, "I pay the price for being without shield." So he stood a while on his other leg and looked at the stump. "You need not to look at it," said Kolskegg. "It is just as you see. The leg is off." Then Koll fell down dead. But when Egil saw this, he ran at Gunnar and made a cut at him. Gunnar thrust at him with the halberd and struck him in the middle, and Gunnar hoisted him up on the halberd and hurled him out into Rangárvellir. Then Starkad said, "Wretch that you are, indeed, Thorir the Norwegian, when you sit by. But your host and father-in-law Egill is slain." Then the Norwegian sprung up and was very angry. Hjört had caused the death of 2 men, and the Norwegian leapt on him and smote him full on the breast. Then Hjört fell down dead on the spot. Gunnar saw this and was swift to smite at the Norwegian, and cut him in half at the waist. A little while after, Gunnar hurled the halberd at Börk and struck him in the middle, and the halberd went through him and stuck in the ground. Then Kolskegg cut off Hauk Egilsson's head, and Gunnar cut off Óttar's hand at the elbow joint. Then Starkad said, "Let us fly now. We are not dealing with men." Gunnar said, "You two will think it a sad story if there is nothing on you to show that you have both been in the battle." Then Gunnar ran after Starkad and Þorgeir, and gave them each a wound. After that they parted, and Gunnar and his brothers had then wounded many men who got away from the field, but 14 lost their lives, and Hjört was the 15th. Gunnar brought Hjört home laid out on his shield, and he was buried in a cairn there. Many men grieved for him, for he had many dear friends. Starkad came home too, and Hildegunn dressed his wounds and Þorgeir's, and said, "You would have given a great deal not to have fallen out with Gunnar." "So we would," said Starkad.